Hi. Let's be honest here, small talk is confusing. Is it the weekend, the weather, or your day I'm supposed to ask about? Having lived in three countries and worked with more than 100, I can say that small talk can be a science, an art, and a trap at the same time. It's tricky, but also elegant, and it's a skill that can be learned. My first live encounter with small talk happened when I was 16, and I moved to live and study to the US on an exchange program. Now, in Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, where I'm from, an industrial city with no nonsense vibe, you do not talk to strangers. And you most definitely do not ask them about your day. So imagine my confusion when people in my US host family's neighborhood waved at me and asked me how I was. The experience has left me puzzled. Do I stop and dish about my life to strangers? Or do I pretend I didn't hear and run? So, when after school I asked my host family how those nice people knew me, the answer was they didn't. They were just being polite. That confused me even more, because what about the don't talk to strangers principle I was taught as a child? But wait, that's not all. You're not actually supposed to say how you really are. You just bounce back some nicety like, good, and you, and hanging in there. Turns out I'm not alone in my confusion with small talk. It's not culturally universal. So wherever you're watching me from, rest assured your culture has its own unique version. Or doesn't. So what is small talk essentially? So about a century ago, anthropologists like Bronislaw Malinowski identified something they called fatigue communion. Fatigue communion is a type of speech intended for sharing social bonds instead of sharing information. So essentially, small talk is ritualized greetings, chit chat on neutral topics, and some work related comments, all intended to grease the wheels of interaction, if done appropriately. So, how do you know you're small talking the right way? Is it still considered small talk when the answer, how someone is, lasts for half an hour? Or does the how are you, good, thanks, and your recitative even count as talk, no matter how small? Well, turns out there's no single recipe or a template for small talk. Every culture does it differently depending on how people balance words and silence. The less comfortable a culture is with silence, the more actively it uses small talk. You may have heard your American colleagues say, so, or right, from your Irish friends when no one's been talking for too long. In some cultures, silence just feels awkward, like there's nothing to talk about. Now, cross-cultural studies of English language TV interviews found that British interviewees used pause more often than Irish, Canadian, and American. And I have to mention Estonia, where I have the privilege of speaking here. University of Tartu published actually a topical paper on how Estonians perceive and practice small talk, and you know what? It's not associated with positive politeness here. In fact, ignoring small talk is one of the acceptable strategies. So let's all agree small talk can be a trap. Firstly, the topic choice. Naturally, sex, money, politics, and religion are universally off limits, but then it gets tricky. How about age and marital status? Is that a passable topic? Very much so in China, as it signals care. But you try that anywhere in North America or Eastern Europe, and you come across as intrusive. Or how about relationships? That topic's gotta be a winner. Not in the Middle East, it's not. Very much so in Ukraine, though, but maybe not at the first interaction. Second, cultural values propensity to small talk. Now, pushing relational dialogue on someone who values silence seems overbearing, but also keeping quiet when chit-chat is expected makes you look tone-deaf and aloof. In France, where I also teach, building verbal rapport with someone is very important, and engaging in light debate on trivial topics is a good start. Or doing some light banter in US or Australia to fit in the team. But less is more in Germany, Finland, or Netherlands when it comes to small talk. Words have to carry actual meaning to be said. And third, oversharing. Okay, I'm having a bad day, right? How am I supposed to answer the how are you question? Does it suffice to say, I've been better? Or I'm having a day, or can I share more? Studies show that talking about salary or serious illness is not a good idea, but what you share beyond that is culture specific and one of the biggest small talk challenges. But let's face it, small talk can also be an art. It makes communication more cohesive, helps structure social interactions, and helps build bridges to meaningful conversations. The art of small talk is knowing when to deepen and when to dance away. Look for your vis-a-vis nonverbal cues. Eye contact, or the lack of it. Tone, whether humor is used, and what kind. Naturally, to take small talk to art level, you need to practice it regularly. So be it weather, sports, traffic, keep a couple of safe topics ready. Actually, to practice small talk as art, you need to be aware how your vis-a-vis view this, how they feel about it. Because sincerity is what makes small talk art. But that's not easy, as in many places in the world, small talk is considered fake. I myself struggled with it for a long time until it hit me. I'm gonna do it out of curiosity, not obligation. And then it becomes connection instead of a pause filler. Sounds difficult, doesn't it? But there's hope, as small talk is a science, and it can be learned. So key point, know your small talk geography. Anglophone cultures like US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada use small talk very actively. So be it cuisine, joint events, someone's weekend, traffic, coffee or tea, all good for light banter. Places like Sweden, Estonia, Norway, Finland, the weather is a tried and true conversation opener. In many African societies, light humor, jokes, extended greetings, humorous texting perform the small talk function, relieving insecurity and helping build connectedness. Now, in places like Southern and Eastern Europe, the Balkans, Latin America, cultures like Romania, Ukraine, Spain, Italy, Brazil, Argentina, Croatia, Serbia, there is no ritualized small talk. So if you ask someone how they are in these places, you better stand there for 15 minutes and listen. And no, small talk is not an extension of hello here, like my American colleague asked. Only the real talk here, you know what I mean? Takes time. Now there are cultures with preference for silence. In places like Netherlands, Germany, Finland, Estonia, Norway, taking a pause in a conversation is actually considered respectful, not awkward. When I moved to Estonia, a local colleague taught me that greeting someone loudly on the bus, like I would do in Ukraine, may draw some suspicious looks, as it violates the norms of social space, personal space. In some East Asian settings, parts of China and Japan, minimal verbal fillers are expected to regulate relationships. For trusted circle here, small talk is not deep enough a ritual to reinforce the interaction, and chit-chatting with strangers is really not habitual. So even if you spend a lot of time here with colleagues and friends, just remember that constant chatting is neither expected nor appropriate. So how do we do small talk the right way? 5 rules. Number 1, choose safe topics. Scenery, cuisine, vacations, traffic, somebody's day. All a good start. Coffee seems to be a safe bet to talk about anywhere. This coffee is sweet, hot, disgusting. Works anywhere, from Tallinn to Kiev, Rio de Janeiro, Dubai, Istanbul, Paris, New York, or Berlin. 2, listen and adapt to local norms. Chit-chat when you are expected to, and keep quiet when you're not. Catch up after a long weekend with your Spanish or Italian colleagues. Complain with Argentinians, Bulgarians, and Ukrainians about whatever it is they're unhappy about. A nod and a smile will suffice. In Norway or Finland, when in doubt, follow your local colleagues or friends' lead. 3, accept silence as part of the conversation. As silence is not absence of communication. It's an integral part of it. Now, words here actually need meaning to be said. So do not feel obliged to fill every pause in a conversation if everyone around you is comfortable with silence. Give gate openers to those outside your culture, like, have you been to Tartu Upside Down House Museum yet? Number 4, be curious. Don't judge. Ask open questions, show genuine interest. Treat differences as insights and learning opportunities. Think in terms of wow, not whoa. So number 5, stay away from taboos and mind local boundaries. So do not talk about sex, religion, politics, illness, money, unless the other person opens that door. When in doubt, keep it light. It's better to sound boring than obnoxious. To conclude, the art, the science, and the trap of cross-cultural small talk is a dance of sorts. Between connectedness and distance, it's so much more than a trivial filler. It's a door opener, a conversation starter, a relationship builder. And it's the culture that defines the choreography here, the pace, the depth, the words, the tone. When we appreciate why some love to chat while others treasure silence, we move from frustration to empathy and connection. And my teenage self, who panicked in the US at "How are you?" would be amused to know today that I teach students from around the world, and I still have to stop my Ukrainian self sometimes from having the big talk when fine thanks will suffice. The beauty of small talk is that it's small. A tiny gesture with outsized power to make us feel seen. Use it wisely, practice it kindly, and remember that the most meaningful connections often start with the awkward, quite the weather we're having, isn't it? Thank you.